Rogue Tulips Consulting presents Nonprofit Conversations, our weekly podcast. I'm your host, Cecilia Sapp. Don't forget to subscribe. We're on all of your favorite podcast services. This week, my guest is Barbara Armentrout, CAE, and principal of Mesa Group. We're going to talk about the Consummate Networker, creating lasting connections. Welcome to episode 180. Hey everybody, it's Monday, January 23rd, and that means it's time for another episode of Nonprofit Conversations. I'm your host, Cecilia Sapp. I'm a certified association executive, and I'm the principal and founder of Rogue Tulips Consulting. To our global audience, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you may be, and thanks for joining us. This week, we have first-time guest, but longtime friend, Barbara Armentrout, who's going to talk with us about the topic of the Consummate Networker. But before we go into the topic, Barbara, would you like to say hello to our audience and tell us a little about yourself?
Well, hello, everybody. I'm Barbara Armentrout. I am a DC native, now living happily in South Florida, where I no longer own a snow shovel, and I'm very happy about that. And I love keeping in contact with everybody all around the country and in some cases around the world. So that'd be me.
That's great. And then your, your company, Barbara, is called Mesa Group, correct?
Yes.
And can you tell us a little bit about Mesa Group?
I am Mesa Group. When it started back when, I also had my husband as part of the company because he's a professional copy editor and proofreader and rewriter. And I still occasionally call on him, but I don't issue him a W-2. Yes, I am a niche consulting company that's a little schizophrenic. Half of me does work with tech stack and what associations need there. The other half of me, the bigger half of me, focuses on non-dues revenue programs. Mm-hmm. That's the part where I really get joy.
Oh, that's great. And those are both areas of interest to myself personally, and I'm sure to many members of our audience, because in the nonprofit world, we do need to find ways to better leverage the resources we have, especially technology, and then find other ways to make money besides people paying for dues. And as you know, Barbara, because we have known each other for a while, you know my position on that. I don't want to pay dues so I can pay to pay. If I'm paying dues, it's either just an entry point or it's got to give me a lot of other stuff. So that's another thing. And I have to say, obviously, we picked the wrong topic because tech stack and non-dues revenue.
No, but both are done through connection. and I know you consider me a consummate networker. I strive to be a good connector. From a tech point of view, I guess I'd be the middleware. So I am often the wait. I hear someone who has a problem. I know someone who may be able to help solve it. And I love to put the two of them together. And then, I'm out of the conversation at that point. But I love being able to do that. And actually, it goes way back to my first career, which is in the publishing world. And I was very fortunate to have gotten a mentor at that point who introduced me. I was in the direct marketing world in publishing, and she taught me that working with associations was essential for the connections. It was essential for the skills exchange and training that I needed to become better at what I did. And it was essential to master the martini lunch, which was very popular at the time. She did teach me how to get through. And I'm not going to say a 3 martini lunch because I never reached that pinnacle, but I could get through the martini lunch, which was how associations did work back in the 80s. And but it was wonderful knowing that, okay, I go to my desk, I do my job, but then I can go off to this meeting, this event, get a little education and be surrounded by people who actually understand what I do. And that was just a wonderful feeling. And I guess I'm going to stop at that point and we'll continue chatting in a different vein.
Oh, okay. No, I love that. And that's the thing. First of all, the reference to the 3 martini lunch. I just love that. For those of you who are a little bit younger than Barbara and myself, the 3 martini lunch was a real mainstay of supposed big deal making, even before the 80s, well before the 80s. So if you've ever heard of the series Mad Men, that's almost like a documentary. So for the audience, especially for our global audience, since not every culture ever had the 3 martini lunch. So when we get to that, though, Barbara, the whole topic of networking. So a lot of times when we're in the nonprofit world, as consultants, as staff, as members, what is one of the benefits? Networking. But there's so many layers of networking. So when you look at networking and you talk about connecting people, which is really what a network is, it's a connection of individuals. And I like to do the same thing you do. It's like, I know a guy who knows a guy, kind of connect them and then let them talk and get to know each other. But when it comes to networking, making the initial connection is actually the easy part. How do you help people stay connected, or how do you stay connected? You're really good at staying connected. So how do you do that?
It's both easy and natural and a lot of hard work and thoughtfulness. I love to attend as many webinars as I can. One of the things that I was blessed and cursed with is I'm curious about everything. So I love attending educational sessions on almost anything you can imagine, because I like to learn something new every day. And if it's something that helps me do my job better, wonderful. If not, it's something I'll store away in the gray matter and figure out, I'm going to connect that to something one day, or I'm going to find that that's a person that I can rely on later. I keep copious notes. I keep a combination of written notes and database notes, because the database notes are far more searchable when I need to retrieve something quickly. But the act of handwriting imprints it more in my brain, so I'm more likely to remember that person. I have some funny little mnemonics for remembering people's names that my husband hates when I go through them, but they do tend to work. And of course, in our association world, we're constantly meeting new people in different circumstances. So often, I'm not going to go back to the martini lunch, but so often, I'm an active ASAE member, which we all know means always standing, always eating.
That's
so
right.
We're not in a position where I can make a note and say, I met this person on this date. My old practice back in the days when we all exchanged business cards was I would scribble a note on the back of the business card as quickly as I could on where I met them and any promises I made to them and anything that I, will help trigger my memory about them. So I hate coming back with that stack of business cards and it's like, oh, I met this person? No.
Oh, gosh, you
So
know, and I
leave myself breadcrumbs whenever possible.
Yeah. Yeah. I used to, I think, and there's a movie starring Halle Berry called Things We Lost in the Fire. And it's about a woman and her family coping after the death of her husband. And I kind of think of it, things we lost in the lockdown, because of the pandemic that started really in force in 2020. And then a lot of the management of it was having lockdowns. And I think we lost a lot of things in the lockdown, like exchanging business cards. I came back with.
But I gained so much in lockdown. I mean, it's a terrible thing for me to say, but that's when everybody got comfortable with Zoom. And a lot of the events that I used to attend in the DC area, I had recently relocated full-time to Florida. And I was really beginning to feel, why did I do this? I'm left out. I'm not seeing all of my favorite people. Oh my God, what did I do? Next thing I know, I'm seeing you all the time. So it's wonderful. It's, and it's not just that we are connecting this way, but everyone got more used to it. So a lot of the associations that I consult with have found that there's this whole new area they can tap into. Everybody focused on, our big annual conferences, the big make all and be all, and that's where everybody makes their money. But we all knew for many, many years that at best 10% of the membership would get to a convention. So with online education, webinars, however it is we want to do it, we can service the other 90% of the people who are paying us dues. And as we said before, they need to get a value for the dollars that they're spending. So I know the lockdown was horrible. It was terrible, but I really came out better.
Well, it's funny that you said that, because we could also hang on one second.
We always like doggies and
yeah. Well, building on that, things we lost in the lockdown, I think those are all really excellent points, Barbara, about things we gained in the lockdown, because a lot of people don't know this. And I mention it whenever it comes up. I had a paid Zoom account years before the lockdown. And I was trying to get people to be on camera more. And they're like, no, 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 I don't want to be on camera. Because I thought, well, I have friends around the country that I don't get to see. And I thought I could do Zoom lunches with my
Yeah.
friends that don't live in state. And some people were open to it and some people weren't. And I was just like, wow. So like it was not a big deal for me when the lockdown happened
I'm
because
amazed at people who will FaceTime, but they won't Zoom.
yeah. And it's like, and I'm a person who doesn't really FaceTime because, it's just not what I do. But my life, speaking of how you said like, well, oh, I moved to Florida. What did I do? Because everybody's somewhere else. But for me, my life really didn't change very much. And I've talked about this, publicly before because I have a virtual company. I've worked
Mhm.
virtually since 2003. I already had a paid Zoom account. No big deal. I had a home office space already set up.
Mhm. Mhm.
When everybody was like, oh, I got to work at home. Oh my God. I was like, what's the big deal?
Well, I'd been doing it for years already. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like I had to step back and find my empathy and compassion because if you're thrown into it not by choice, that's a really different situation than me choosing to be a virtual person. So that was very different. But I also kind of call it my Emily Dickinson period because I became something of a recluse because I really
Mhm.
didn't go to anything in person for quite a while. And so that's why I was so excited to go to the SAE meeting in Nashville last August in 2022 and actually
Mhm.
go to a real conference and be around people and have like that similar experience. And I got to tell you a funny thing about that when I was going so in Montgomery County, Maryland, to get our vaccine, we had to go to the old Lord and Taylor location in Columbia Mall.
Ah.
And that's where we went. And it was like going to a conference. It like really cheered me up because they had volunteers greeting people and hello, just go in this line over here. And you talk to all these different people. Everybody was very friendly. And they even had an engaging experience at the end because they wanted you to sit for 15 minutes to make sure you were okay. And they asked you to write the reason you were getting the vaccine and put it up on the wall. And I was like, oh my God, it's like going to a conference. I love it. And
Wow. They
yeah,
made it a wonderful experience. Now, see,
it,
they're all networkers too. Yes.
yes, exactly. And so that's kind of the thing, networking is, as you say so well, about connecting with each other and then helping other people connect. And
Mhm.
you are so good at that. And I know you and I have this running joke over the years about like people say, I know everyone. And I'll say, no, Barbara knows everyone. And then you always reply, no, between us, we know everyone. And that's probably it. It's sort of like the concept of 6 degrees of separation,
Mhm.
where everybody is just six
Yeah.
steps away from someone. So
Although I do enjoy meeting new people all the time too. I like, and it just, and sorry, I'm interrupting you on this, but one
no, no,
thing I enjoy about attending Zoom webinars is you literally get to watch how people think. And that's
mhm.
wonderful. I mean, it is the same as being in an office in many ways, but it's a little more free because, we're in this little structure. And
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I know, and that's a good point too. And I actually think we live in this amazing world. And I know it seems like all the news headlines are bad lately. It seems like everybody's, now, it's like my husband and I were talking about this yesterday. It's like 25 years ago, the rallying cry was do it for the children. Now it seems like the rallying cry is we're on the verge of human extinction. And I'm like, what? We just hit
But
8
it's
billion.
being said by the children that we saved. So there you go.
Well, there you go. And it's just like, hey, whoa, let's take a step back and calm down a little bit. But we live in a world that is really actually a very wonderful place in a lot of ways. No, is the world perfect? Absolutely not. Are people being persecuted right at this moment? Yes, they are. Do people need help right at this moment? Yes, they do. But the thing is, we have the ability to help these people and we have the ability to connect because we have all this wonderful technology. Use the term tech stack, which was my favorite term of 2021. That's when I first learned tech stack because I took the VEIP course
Mm.
about virtual events. And I was like, oh, wow, tech stack. I love that. And I used it like every chance I got. But this the thing is we all have this personal tech stack now. We have smartphones, we have Zoom, we have online opportunities to connect, find information to work. And when I think about the fact that we were talking about remote work well before the lockdown,
Hmm.
and how we could bring in somebody from any part of the country if you worked in the United States, or really any part of the world if you wanted to reach out globally. You could bring people together using this technology. And I think it's wonderful for real-time conversation because you actually see each other. And like you said, see how people think. We're in this wonderful situation where we can really connect constantly to the point where we're like, turn it off. I got so much. So, so what you mentioned earlier, you had some mnemonics for remembering names, or
I don't know if I can go public with any of them though.
Oh, okay. Well, I was going to say, but mnemonics are just, so maybe you say like, I met this guy at Hardee's and his name's Harvey or something. I mean,
Something
that's
along, yes.
like,
And in some cases, if a person's name is similar to another name, that's easier for me to recall. So, I talk about having them in that drawer in my brain. So,
the file cabinet that gets bigger as we go on.
Oh, yes.
The bigger the file cabinet gets.
Yes, yes. But I want to remember people as individuals. And sometimes I'm astonished when I know a whole lot about a person. I can't remember where they currently work, because that wasn't what we were talking about. We were just being individuals getting to know one another. And then that'll come up at the end of the conversation. And then, of course, the conversation has to go on for another 40 minutes. But, I don't feel that a job defines the person always. Sometimes it does. And sometimes that's how professionals tend to present themselves. I am Barbara and I am a consultant. Well, what does that tell you? Nothing.
Right.
And and I try to guide some folks on how to make yourself more personable to me, so that I can understand you as an individual and not just you as another one of these bots that I encountered in the line waiting to get my buffet lunch at a conference.
Oh. That is such a good point, because I think so often when we are at a professional event, we tend to say our title as if that tells you something. Like,
I know.
That's not who we are. You're absolutely right. And I was wondering, and you may not have any advice or tips, and that's okay, but for people like myself who are really good at remembering faces and where I met someone and what we talked about, but I'll be darned if I can remember that person's name.
Well, I mean, the classic is, while you're meeting them, use their name back to them.
Okay.
Well, Cecilia, thank you. That was a very good point that you made. It's not perfect, because the people that I had that were teaching it to me would say, you do it immediately upon meeting them. Well, sometimes I have imprinted the name of somebody that I hope never to cross paths with again. So I usually want to wait until there is something that I choose to remain in contact with Cecilia. And sometimes I will make a point of asking about the name, because, as you and I have discussed, our names are so simple and so easy to pronounce, except for people who don't know us. So, where's that name from? And, whatever. And if there is a level of comfort with the person talking about themselves in those terms, it helps me get to know them a little more. And it lets me see behind the professional jacket a little bit, see the person in there. If they're not comfortable with it, then we go on to another subject. What I do try to achieve in conversations, I am happy to tell self-effacing stories about myself all the time. I don't consider it talking about myself. I'm trying to get someone to relax and to understand, hey, Barbara's screwed up lots of times too. Because when I'm doing discovery calls as a consultant, quite often the success stories, everybody's easy to tell. I want to hear some of the times when things screwed up, when things didn't go as you expected, and dig into some of the whys and wherefores of that, so that we can learn from that and then move forward. One of the quotes I have from you is, when you were back on association staff and you wanted to do something different at a conference and people were fearful about it, what if it doesn't work? And your answer was, then we won't do it again. I mean, it's perfect. But sometimes it's not easy to get folks in our happily adopted world of the associations to do things differently.
Mhm.
But because, oh no, we tried that in 1902 and it blew up in our face. But sometimes in getting them comfortable enough to talk about what blew up in our face can get us examining the new opportunities that exist, such as with the tech stack, such as with, oh, well, that was for a different portion of our membership. Maybe if we aimed it at these people instead, maybe if we delivered it this way instead of that way, maybe if we had a better speaker lined up. I mean, there's so many ways you can influence a success.
Right.
So I like to try to get people talking to me about that. What didn't always work. So.
Well, and I think we all know that's really the only way you learn anything. If everything goes smoothly,
That's boring.
yeah, it is. It is. It's
Well,
very
things go smoothly because, the professionals were in the background, like the duck, with the feet going furiously for weeks and months ahead of time so
Mhm.
that it would look smooth. But yeah, smooth is kind of boring.
It is. And you don't you're so right, kind of coming back for a moment to what you said about the association world. The entire nonprofit community tends to do the same thing over and over again. And I think a lot of times we're in an echo chamber in this
Mm,
profession, and we say, well, but that's what everybody else is doing. And, benchmarking has become copying bad systems. That's
mhm.
my opinion, everyone, not Barbara's necessarily. But
I don't disagree. And Jeff DeCania, one of our wonderful foresight thinkers, pointed out years ago that there's a big problem with best practices, because by the time they become best practices, they are probably ripe for reevaluation.
that's right.
So, if we always follow best practices, we're a couple of steps behind being innovative and thinking ahead. So,
And my favorite quote on best practices is from the book Humanize by Jamie Notter
mm,
Grant, where they say, is it a best practice or just what everybody else is doing?
yes.
Because it's what everybody else is doing doesn't necessarily mean it's the best way to do it. And it's not always the way you should do it. One of the things that people at smaller organizations mention a lot about presentations from nonprofit associations like ASAE or some of the regional or state groups, so they tend to be geared toward the larger organizations
Mhm.
that have, a little bit of monies. A lot of nonprofit organizations are small staff, small budget. And so ideas come in that, oh yeah, it's a great idea. If I had that $15 million budget, I only have a $2 million
Or if I
budget.
had somebody with the time to do it. Yes.
Exactly. And that's really the thing, because we have to manage our resources. And that's why I always have taken the attitude, let me look around, see what everybody else is doing, talk to people, use my network, kind of bringing it back to our topic, which all of these other things we're talking about, and just kind of see what everybody else is doing and then see what might work for me. And then I talk to other people, and I look, first I look around and then I talk to people, and I talk to, 4 to 6 people usually about something before I make a decision. And it's kind of funny about me. I think a lot of times people think I just dive in, just like, oh, let me just do this thing. And they don't realize, like, to your point about the professionals making a meeting happen
Mhm.
in the background, it looks smooth because a lot of hard work went on in the background. People don't realize the process a lot of us go through before we do that thing.
Mhm.
We're thinking, we're talking to people, we're gathering information and assessing how this could work for us or what would work for us if we use this for inspiration.
Mhm.
And that's where having a big network can come in handy, because you need a lot of different people to talk to that have different perspectives and have
Mhm.
different information to share, different experiences. They may have more experience, they may have less experience. But sometimes talking to somebody with less experience is more helpful because they're looking at it
Fresh
completely.
eyes. Mhm.
So the fresh eyes. So, well, Barbara, this has been a great conversation, not necessarily always about being a consummate networker, but obviously
It's
we
all
need to,
connected, though. It is.
it is, it is all connected. And I'd like to ask you before we do our wrap up, what advice might you have for somebody who does network, but maybe they feel they could get better at networking? what are some things they could do to improve their networking activities?
I would say always approach every situation with kindness. Don't try to grab as many business cards or any electronic equivalent of it. It's not how many contacts you make, it's how many connections you make. And I would rather come away from an event with a little depth of understanding of 2 people than 10. And frankly, my brain can't handle the 10 anyway. It's only the 2 that I can balance at a time. But have a reason why you want to know someone. Is this for business purposes? Is this because they seem like a really nice person? And be willing to give of yourself as you are asking them questions about themselves. And, like I said, I'm curious about everything and everybody. So I love to just get people talking about themselves. Most people will.
And that really is a great way to meet people and learn about them. Ask them about themselves, because they'll probably ask you about yourself.
And sometimes it's purely in a professional focus. But then, and that's another thing I love about Zoom, where I get to know about all the cats, kids, and dogs,
Yeah.
And it makes people human, which is, that's the best part.
Yeah, human is always good, because that's the one thing we do all have in common.
So
is we are all human. If we don't all look alike, we don't all live in the same place or speak the same language, but we are all human, and that's a starting point for connection. So, and I have, I know I said I'm going to ask you one more thing. Absolutely going to ask you one more thing.
You're being Columbo today. Okay.
Because yes, and then I'll ask you where you got those shoes in Columbo. But so when you introduce yourself, do you say, I am Barbara Armentrout, or do you say, my name is Barbara Armentrout?
I don't know. I think I say I'm. How do you differentiate that?
Well, because, and I ask people this question sometimes, and they kind of look at me like, well, what do you mean? What is the difference here? So if you say my name is, like if I say my name is Cecilia Sepp, that's like a label, kind of to your point earlier about titles. But if I say I am Cecilia Sepp, I feel that I'm owning my entire existence and everything that goes into who I am. I am Cecilia Sepp. It's not just my name. I am this entity, Cecilia Sepp. So
I think years ago when I got divorced and I bought my name back, I probably said my name is Barbara Armentrout, because I had to pay for it at that time.
Right.
But now I am. Yes.
Yeah. See this, and I just always think that's kind of an interesting insight into how people approach the world, because that's me. That's my approach to the world. I was once called a rugged individualist, and the person meant it as an insult, but I took it as a compliment because
you're a rugged individualist. Yes.
We need more rugged individualists in the world. Well, Barbara, it's been so lovely having you, and it's been just a really fun conversation about lots of different things that all come back to networking and how we can continue to build our networks, and by building our network, build community, connection, and understanding between everybody. Eventually, give us enough time and we'll accomplish that. So as you know, as a longtime listener, first-time guest of the podcast, I like to ask my guests, what is the one thought you would like the audience to take away today? And if they wanted to get in touch with you to discuss this topic or find out what you do at Mesa Group and how you could help them, what's the best way to get in touch?
Best way is through LinkedIn. I live on LinkedIn every single day, even on holidays. And LinkedIn is a wonderful tool for somebody who wants to make connections. I mean, it is a really good business connector, but it's also a way to find out other people who are somewhat like you. I am not a Facebook fan, but if you want to use that, go right ahead. And what is the point I'm making here?
What is the, I ask myself that frequently throughout the day. What is the one thought you would like the audience to take away today?
Everyone has the ability to be a very good connector or networker. Introverts can be as effective as extroverts. In some cases, probably more effective because you pay more attention than people like me who run at their mouth all the time. But just have a reason why you're choosing to connect with someone in this situation and enjoy it. Get to know lots of people. You'll learn lots of wonderful things and you'll make new friends.
Well, that is a wonderful closing thought. Thank you so much. And again, everyone, I would like to thank my guest and longtime friend, Barbara Armentrout of Mesa Group, for joining us today to talk about networking in all of the different areas that it affects and supports.
Thank you.
If you would like to learn more about Rogue Tulips Consulting and how we can help you bloom outside the box, check out our website, roguetulips.com. We have a services page if you'd like to see what we get up to with our clients. If you are a current CAE or a CAE candidate and you are seeking education opportunities, check out our education program, the 501c League. It has its own website, the501cleague.net. And our courses for the spring are really launching February 8th. So please join us that week for study groups, courses, and other webinar offerings. So on behalf of Barbara and myself, thanks for joining us this week, and we'll see you next time.